Hello, my name is Melanie Jacobson, and I'm going to be going through the details of the Green Building Ordinance in the following slide deck. As you go through, please note down any questions that you might have and let us know how we can help you through this process. Okay, in this video, we're going to be going over a brief overview of the Green Building Submittals timeline. We'll be doing a forms and worksheets demo and reviewing the enforcement process for the Green Building Ordinance on non-residential projects. So in this slide, you'll notice the timeline for a typical non-residential project. On the left-hand side, you'll notice the planning and entitlements phase, and this is only projects subject to planning review. Some projects will come in right at permitting and won't be subject to the planning, but if the project is subject to planning, then we will need to see preliminary sheets included in the planning application. And that is included in the form of a GB1 sheet. Similarly, at the permit plan check phase, we'll need to see the final version of the green building sheets included in the permit plans. Then once we get to inspections, there are 3 different phases of requirements included for enforcement. So there is a required green building pre-construction meeting. There is a required green building incremental verification, and that's only for requirements subject to incremental verification. So there are a limited number of those, so you'll need to check the green building inspection guidelines to determine if your project meets those requirements. And then finally, the green building final inspection, and projects need to reference the city's green building inspection guidelines that are shown on the slide. Then after occupancy, there was a required Energy Star portfolio manager benchmark that is required to be submitted to the city, and those requirements are outlined on the website. This slide shows a demo of the Green Building for Non-Residential New Construction and Renovation Compliance Verification Form. The way this form works is it includes all the project triggers on the left-hand column and the requirements identified in the middle column, along with the compliance schedule and instructions on the right-hand side. Similarly, this is the Green Building GB1 sheet, which is shown in an Excel document and needs to be included in the permit plans as identified on the Green Building verification form. This slide highlights tips for properly filling out the GB1 sheet for mandatory Tier 1 and Tier 2 projects. For each green building measure, indicate if the item is applicable or not applicable to the scope of work for the project. For applicable code measures, mark Y for yes. For code measures outside the scope of work, mark N for no. For each applicable item, ensure that the reference column indicates where the relevant documentation can be found. For Tier 1 and Tier 2 projects, check the mandatory amount of electives indicated on the GB1 sheet. Each project shall complete and submit the Green Building Survey. The GB1 sheet components, as we just outlined, show the different requirements for both mandatory and elective requirements. So the mandatory requirements or tier prerequisites from the appendix are listed under mandatory. The tier elective requirements are listed under electives, and these are located in the appendix. The code section reference within the Green Building Code are listed to the right. When there are numbers only, this references the main body of the code. When numbers are preceded with an A, this means that provision is from the appendix. And note that Tier 1 and Tier 2 mandatory requirements also have an A. So just keep that in mind that in some cases, items with an A are mandatory. Anything that references a local reference or ordinance will be listed as with an ordinance number or Palo Alto Municipal Code. This slide outlines the legend for the GB1 sheet components. So items listed as a Y are identified as yes, the provision applies, and N outlines not applicable or not triggered. And we ask that you include a reference within the construction documents, and that's listed here. And these are for your reference only, just to provided to help make enforcement predictable for you as the applicant. This slide outlines the green building page that outlines the compliance process, a summary of the history of green building in Palo Alto, as well as other enforcement resources. The green building compliance page outlines, defines the detailed requirements for projects at each phase. So make sure to visit this page to understand the requirements that will be available for or required for each phase. This slide outlines resources for the applicant teams, both at the state and local level.
And now we'll go into the plan check procedures for Cal Green mandatory projects.
This slide outlines the procedures to prepare for your plan check. The applicant team will be required to include the GB sheets and review that sheet and complete using the standard green building conditions found on the web page. The plan checker will be responsible for reviewing the GB sheets within the plan check process and review using the standard green building conditions, so everybody's looking at the same document.
This slide shows the plan check procedures for projects subject to Tier 1 or Tier 2 requirements. The applicant team shall include the GB1 sheet for plan check review in accordance with the green building standard conditions. A green building special inspector from the city's approved list is required for third-party verification to ensure that the correct provisions are incorporated into the permit plans. The city plan checker will review the GB1 sheet for compliance with the standard conditions.
This is an example of the standard conditions for non-residential projects, and it's a very detailed conditions document that outlines the requirements. Thank you so much for listening to the non-residential green building submittals requirement, and please let us know if you have any questions.